you're missing half the picture of what OT cybersecurity is about, which is understanding if this cyber physical system is being disrupted or affected because of a cyber related incident or not. And you cannot really answer that question, really answer it well and accurately and faster and more confidently if you're not looking at OT XDR from a network process endpoint and physical actuation system point of view.
Hi, welcome to another episode of Exalens OTT. I'm Andrew McFarland here with Dr. Ryan Hartfield, and today we are going to talk about acronyms in our industry that can confuse people because there's a lot of words that describe very similar things. And sometimes, as someone who's from the outside, I'm not the cybersecurity expert in this room. That's Ryan. Coming into this industry, it seems like knowing the acronyms lets people know that you're in the game and you're part of the club. And so I had to learn quite a few of these to speak the language. But we're talking about OT, operational technology, and then we're talking about also XDR, extended detection response, and EDR, endpoint detection response. And so these words and acronyms, as far as I can tell, have evolved over the years to describe an ever-changing progress in digital transformation and the connectivity and building safety parameters, security parameters around all these devices that we come in contact with on a great scale every single day. We see them all the time. So, Ryan, let's go back in time, maybe. Let's go back to a simpler day.
Okay.
And maybe we can set this in the Purdue model. I don't know what the best framework might be to kind of like give people an idea of what kind of devices we're talking about and how the spectrum of devices now gets part of the definition of what is extended detection and response. Mm-hmm. But there was a time where there was very simple. And now we've got a plethora of devices and connected cyber physical systems in many different verticals of industries. And we've come up with these terms. So maybe take us back for a second.
I'll take you back in time. So, XDR and EDR, by the way, these are very much cybersecurity terms, right? So I'll come on to why they were created, and which is mainly for marketing, but I'll come on to why they were created, what they actually mean to people that want to utilize them for their benefit. But let me take you back in time. So I'm not going to talk about operational technology. I'm going to talk about cybersecurity from an IT perspective. Back in the it could be even late 1970s. There's a book that I have downstairs, right, about antivirus, or about viruses and antivirus.
It's on your coffee table right now.
I don't know where it is actually. It had a floppy disk in the back, right? So it's very, very old. But it was one of the first books around computer viruses, where from the inception of our computer systems, we could install software on that system that would do things that were undesirable, right? We would do things that would give you some end of control for abuse or misuse. So in order to deal with those situations, to detect or prevent viruses, the word doesn't really kind of exist today in a way for cybersecurity. We built antivirus, right? Much like we consider the immune system, we build, we have viruses and we have sort of antigens and things, and we respond by building a system that can detect that and prevent it or respond to it. So we built antivirus, and antivirus was something that we installed as a piece of software, monitoring software on a computer system to identify viruses, right? But obviously that can include a whole bunch of things. Trojan horses, software that says it's doing one thing, but it's doing something else as well. Malware, people are familiar with these terms, malicious software. There's lots of overlap between these terms. But in any case, we had on-host antivirus or software monitoring for malicious activity that it could detect, block, and respond to, or even block from running in the first place, right? And that was on the host. Then, so that was the when I say endpoint host, I mean like a laptop, a personal computer, obviously mobile phones now. Windows machine, Mac laptop, what have you. And then that in the kind of endpoint space, the industry expanded that to have more capabilities. So antivirus kind of evolved from being looking for signatures are bad, but for doing other stuff, proactively looking at processes and trying to just really monitor what that system's doing in a multifaceted way. And so what we found, and there's loads of terms that have come out since, right? Just EDR is stuck, but EDR is basically the evolution, right? At least from a cybersecurity perspective, of antivirus from back in that sort of late 1970s, for example, the first form, to today, which is proactive monitoring software on the host that can identify threats of normal activity and respond to them automatically for you, right? So identify like a rogue process on your Windows operating system that's executing other sub-child processes that are doing bad stuff, like encrypting files or exfiltrating data or what have you. And EDR.
Just one second, on the endpoint side, if someone doesn't know what endpoint means, how would you describe it?
I mean,
it's kind of in the name, but
yeah, a system that's connected to a network, right? That is an endpoint system. So that's usually going to be, I don't know, a server can be an endpoint, right? A server system, or a laptop, a PC, a mobile phone. Any endpoint device that's connecting to a network to communicate, basically, is what we refer to as endpoint. So when we say endpoint defense and response, what we're talking about here is installing something on that endpoint to detect malicious or abnormal activity and respond to it automatically. And obviously, that's grown over time in terms of the capabilities. In network space back in time, I'll sort of speed this up, we had NIDS, we call it, so network intrusion detection systems. And basically they were kind of the AV of the network. So you would have a NIDS connecting to a choke point in the network, maybe the router to the internet, or maybe a core aggregation point in your network, where it would look at the network packets and would look for signatures in the network packets, say, oh, this is bad, right? And I'm going to block this, or I'm going to write a detection and send it off to a security operations center for them to respond. And that was very kind of like, just looking at packets, but not really looking at kind of more holistic connectivity and relationships throughout the environment between endpoints. So you had NIDS and you had AV, and NIDS then moved and transformed in the last sort of 10 years now into NDR, network detection and response, where we're looking more holistically at connection data between devices, a much deeper level in the application data. We were using a browser, what sort of data are you sending, what kind of files you're uploading, sort of looking really across that in a distributed way across all your endpoints and seeing how they're communicating and what they're doing at a network level, not just at the packet level. I'm really oversimplifying this, right, in the interest of time. But the point is you had an NDR that focused quite heavily on the network, right, almost and certainly entirely on the network, what you can see in the network data, right, and then EDR, what you can see on the host. Mm-hmm. And what happened was, maybe in the last sort of 5 to 6 years, is XDR came about. And all XDR was really is combining those two things, extended detection. So I'm not only looking at the endpoint data host, I'm not only looking at the network data, but I'm looking at both. Or maybe I'm also looking at data over what we call APIs, right? Application programmable interfaces. So, I'm looking at feeds coming from other systems, and I'm just basically combining all this telemetry, again, to detect threats, correlate them, and respond to them automatically. Not in all cases, but certainly that's growing now in terms of autonomous response. Those terms have very much been marketing terms in the cybersecurity industry to build some sort of nomenclature we can all hold and grab onto. The difference for cyber physical systems, when we talk about OT XDR, though, is, the network is definitely part of operational technology systems. They communicate over a network, whether it's a field bus or an Ethernet TCP/IP network, and they communicate. So we absolutely want to see this on the network. But when we think about true OT devices, true industrial control system or industrial automation system endpoints, they're not Windows machines. Okay, that's incorrect. Let me step back. They're very old Windows machines, or they're embedded Windows machines, right? So, you can bet your bottom dollar that practically all of over the last 30 years, Windows had a complete stranglehold. Microsoft had a complete stranglehold over the operating system of choice using industrial computers, like HMIs, for example, human machine interfaces, engineering workstations, inbuilt controllers that are controlling robotic arms. It would all be Windows operating systems, with the exception of PLCs, so programmable logic controllers. They would have some embedded firmware ladder logic, for example, where you're uploading a program, right? They have some computational aspects beyond that, of course, but they don't have an operating system like Windows. That's changing now. You get PLCs of Linux and whatnot. But the point here is that many of them are still embedded. And so you have lots of embedded systems where you can't install EDR, right? You can never install antivirus. And if you could, you'd probably be breaking the warranty of the system, right? Because it's going to be locked down. If you look like a robotic arm like KUKA, for example, they used Windows 7, Windows 10 embedded. You can even remote desktop to that machine, but installing anything on that's probably going to break the warranty of it. Regardless, typically you can't get EDR monitoring on an industrial endpoint. So when we look at OT XDR, what we're saying is that we're combining how do we combine first and foremost that endpoint monitoring? And by the way, we're not just looking at the network. We're not just looking at the endpoint data on the operating system. We're also including in that picture the physical behavior, right, of that industrial system, that industrial endpoint, the physical actuation and sensing. Because let's be clear here, we've got a PLC that's controlling some sort of physical phenomena, right, a mechanical, electrical process in some way. Obviously, it's more than that, pressure, temperature, etc. But it's controlling some physical actuation or sensing, and therefore extended detection and response in OT space is actually sub-physical. So when we talk about extended, we're saying not only the network, not only what's happening computationally on the OT endpoint, but what's actually happening as well from a physical point of view, from a process variable point of view. And if we think about what's being used typically in the industrial space for process monitoring in the past, it's condition-based monitoring, right? I'm going to collect that data, physical data, and I'm going to identify manually high and low thresholds of danger or badness that I want to be notified of, and maybe have a safe instrumentation system that would be notified or have some fail-safe operation if they got triggered. But practically speaking, that'll be how you use that data. But now what we're seeing across the industry the use of the term XDR. But how people are really using it and talking about it is in terms of IT, right? XDR. I'm combining the network, combining endpoint monitoring, and I'm doing some automated response. But we at Exalens think about OT XDR as another intersection or expanding section of extended. We talk about extended in terms of cyber physical extension. So we don't just look at the network. When we say you shouldn't just look at the network, or you shouldn't just look at what's happening on the endpoint, even if you can in the first place, because you can't install an EDR tool. But you should also be considering that picture of detection and response, what's happening physically, right? What's happening from a physical and sensing point of view. And therefore, OT XDR is looking at a problem holistically from a monitoring and security point of view. It's saying OT XDR equals network, equals endpoint, equals process, equals physical. And by combining all of that visibility into the monitoring process and detection process and response process, you're able to truly address OT cybersecurity problems that are very unique to OT environments. If I may say so, again, probably popular opinion, most NDRs that we're finding in the operational technology space are reappropriated NDR capabilities that we've seen used in the enterprise space with extra OT protocol analysis at the network level and vulnerability identification at the network level. But that's only a small portion of what has already been around for a long time. What there hasn't been is the equivalent EDR, so the endpoint detection response capability for industrial endpoints, because you couldn't install it. There was no way to do that, with the exception of taking the approach that we take, which is using an agentless way to collect that data. That's another discussion for another time in more detail.
I think in the perfect world, we would just say XDR and people would understand that OT is incorporated with that. But because it's so new, I think we're mainly doing this because it's our thesis, basically. It is around our solution, which is new to the industry. So we're coming up. We have these conversations. But yeah, in a perfect world, we'd say XDR, and people would say, yes, that includes OT. That makes sense. It should make sense. We're bridging the visibility into all these other areas, OT should be incorporated in that. But it's not yet. It's new. So we say OT XDR so that people get that framework in their heads. But hopefully, I'm hoping we live in a future where you just say XDR and people will think OT. And
we had something else. We had something else though, Andrew. If you recall, we were discussing this as cyber physical detection and response. So CPDR.
Yeah,
but
too new. It's too new. We're already. It's too many definitions. But
Gartner haven't picked it up yet, right? If Gartner pick it up, then we'll obviously sidestep, right?
Gartner, if you listen to this, do cyber physical detection response, and that would be absolutely everything. It's kind of like meta, isn't it? It's like our definition of physics has changed over the centuries, and so now we just matter isn't what matter used to be, and cybersecurity isn't just the cyber anymore.
I think we've got a future podcast we have planned where we're going to talk about something being dead and long live what comes next. And I think I don't want to ruin that. I want to save that because I love the title so much.
You love it.
Really relish the title. But what I would say is, when we think, what we want people to remember is when we talk about OT XDR, because if you say, it's XDR, right, to an IT person, they're like, oh, okay, fine. So it's like a system that's monitoring on the endpoint, wants a bit of the network, wants a bit of the endpoint, does some response, right? And actually, they're thinking from an IT context. You say XDR to a process automation engineer, they're going to look at you and go, what does that mean, right? I'm not an IT security person. But what we want really people to understand is when we see OT XDR, for want of a better term that exists in the market now that people can use kind of across the board, is it's holistic monitoring security for cyber physical systems. That's network, that's the process endpoint, as well as physical actuation and sensing, and combining that complete view end to end across even one system or multiple systems, so you can detect and respond to threats and anomalies and situations that manifest across those perspectives, those lenses of the system. And I think that's the game changer for us. We are absolutely adamant that cyber physical monitoring, detection and response, OT XDR, is the future of true OT cybersecurity monitoring. That it is a combination of that cyber and physical world. And ultimately, if you only have a view of the EDR or the NDR, or you only think about XDR from an enterprise security point of view, you're missing half the picture of what OT cybersecurity is about, which is understanding if this cyber physical system is being disrupted or affected because of a cyber related incident or not. And you cannot really answer that question, really answer it well and accurately and faster and more confidently if you're not looking at OT XDR from a network process endpoint and physical actuation sensor point of view. And that's what we mean. That's our definition. But right now, it's always about not trying to reinvent the wheel and add new acronyms into the market. That's like, what on earth is CPDR? But I'm really confident in saying, Andrew, that OT XDR is I'm sure Gartner will come out of their own kind of play on this, but it really is true holistic cyber physical monitoring and security.
I think that's great. That's perfect. It's a great way to put it. OT endpoints, OT XDR, it's holistic. It incorporates everything. And then it gives you, like you said, the best visibility to detect any anomalies or threats or whatever you might have, which is why we can do root cause analysis. Using AI, I think our next episode will be on AI in these systems. We'll jump into that topic next. But I think you put it perfectly. I think that's a great way to end this episode.
There's one thing I'll say before we end the episode is people are like, they mentioned the word AI, the problem you've got, which we'll answer in the next episode, not answer, but we'll give our view on the problem, is if you combine that data together, it's really hard to do manually, right? Without introducing an AI-based approach to be learning and modeling that data to identify threats, anomalies, and root cause analysis. So, you can't, cyber physical detection response, OT XDR, goes hand in hand with AI. AI is the enabler of getting to that state of capability. And we'll talk about ways in which we look at that cyber physical AI, which I think we're going to be looking at in the podcast in the future.
Next one. Amazing. We'll see you in the next one. Thanks, Ryan. And
Thanks.
bye.